The alarm screamed through the bridge of the exploration ship Mercury as Jake Morrison gripped his console. Red lights flashed across every screen, warning of the massive radiation wave rolling toward them from the dying star. Ahead, the star was tearing itself apart, sending deadly energy in all directions. "Tipton, we need to jump out of here now," said Lisa Grant from the command chair. Her knuckles were white as she held onto the armrests. "That radiation will cook us alive in 15 minutes. Jake nodded, his fingers already moving across the controls to prepare the jump drive. Then his screen lit up with a new signal. His heart sank as he read the data. "Wait, there's a ship out there close to the star. They're caught in the gravity." "Well," Lisa leaned forward, studying her own displays. "That's a Velcara vessel, Imperial class. By the looks of it, what are they doing this close to a collapsing star?" "Doesn't matter. They're trapped. Life signs show at least 20 people on board. They've got maybe 10 minutes before the radiation hits lethal levels." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what Jake was thinking. Everyone also knew it was suicide. The Velcara Empire controlled most of the known galaxy. They were ancient, powerful, and looked down on humans as barely civilized newcomers. They had technology that made human ships look like toys. But right now those superior aliens needed help. "We don't have the shielding to go in there," Lisa said quietly. "Our shuttle might make it, but whoever pilots it probably won't make it back." Jake was already unbuckling his harness. "The shuttle's automated systems can handle the return flight. I just need to get close enough to grab survivors." "Jake, don't be stupid. They wouldn't do the same for us." "Maybe not," Jake said, heading for the shuttle bay, "but that's what makes us different, isn't it?" Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, then opened the ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump. Morrison, you have 8 minutes, not 1 second more." Jake ran through the corridors, his boots clanging on the metal floors. He reached the shuttle bay and jumped into the small rescue craft. His hands moved on autopilot, running through the pre-flight checklist at triple speed. The bay doors opened, and he shot out into space. The radiation counters immediately started climbing. The dying star ahead looked beautiful and terrible, its surface churning with violent explosions. The Velcara ship was small against that backdrop, tumbling slowly as it fought against the star's pull. Jake pushed the shuttle's engines to maximum. The little craft shook and rattled, its shields flickering under the radiation. Bombardment warnings filled his screen, but he ignored them all. He could see the Velcara ship more clearly now. Its elegant curves and golden hull were scorched and damaged. One side was completely dark. He brought the shuttle alongside and activated the docking clamps. Metal screeched as the two ships connected. Jake grabbed his helmet and sealed suit, then hit the airlock controls. The door opened into chaos. The Velcara ship's interior was filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Jake's translator crackled to life as he heard voices crying out in the Velcara language. "Here, we need help here." Jake ran toward the voice. He found a group of Velcara huddled in what looked like a medical bay. They were tall and elegant with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They wore elaborate robes that marked them as nobility. One of them stood protectively over a Female who lay injured on the floor. The female was clearly important, even. Injured and covered in soot, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her robes were silver and purple. Colors Jake had learned meant imperial. Blood. Her eyes met his and he saw surprise flash across her face. "You're human," she said in perfect English. "Yes, and we're leaving." Jake moved to help her up, but the male Velkara blocked his path. "How dare you touch the Princess Empress? I am Chancellor Vex, and I will not allow." 4 minutes, Jake interrupted, checking his suit timer. "In 4 minutes this whole area will be flooded with enough radiation to kill everyone here. You can die with your dignity, or you can live by accepting help from a human, your choice." The Princess Empress pushed herself up, wincing in pain. "Stand aside, Vex. This human has more courage than half my court." She looked at Jake. "How many can your ship carry?" "All of you if we squeeze, but we need to move now." She nodded and began giving orders in her own language. The Velkara moved quickly, helping the injured and gathering what they could. Jake led them back to the shuttle, counting heads as they climbed aboard. 23 in total. The shuttle was designed for 12. "This will be tight," he muttered, sealing the airlock. He ran back to the cockpit and disengaged the docking clamps. The shuttle pulled away from the dying Velkara ship just as another radiation wave hit. The shuttle's shields held, but barely. Jake could hear the system warning screaming at him. The Princess Empress had followed him to the cockpit. She gripped the back of his chair as the shuttle shook. "You came into this radiation storm alone. For strangers. For people who needed help," Jake corrected, fighting with the controls. The star's gravity was pulling at them, and the engines were straining. Might want to hold on to something. He diverted all power to the engines and fired them at maximum. The shuttle groaned and shuddered, but slowly began to pull away from the star's grip. Behind them, the Velkara ship finally succumbed to the gravity, tumbling into the star's corona and vanishing in a flash of light. 2 minutes to safe distance, Jake said, watching his instruments. "The Mercury will jump as soon as we're clear." The Princess Empress was silent for a moment, then she said, "What is your name?" "Human. Jake Morrison, engineer. 3rd class." "Jake Morrison," she repeated as if testing the sound. "You have saved my life and the lives of my retinue. By the ancient laws of my people, this creates a debt that must be honored." Jake managed a tired smile. "Just doing what anyone should do." "No," she said firmly, "not anyone would have done this, certainly none of my own people would have risked themselves for humans." She paused. "I am Lyra Velshara, Princess Empress of the Velkara Empire, and I invoke the right of champions. You have proven yourself worthy through courage and sacrifice." Jake glanced back at her confused. "I don't know what that means." Lyra's expression was unreadable. "It means, Jake Morrison, that you are now bound to me as my champion, as my mate." Before Jake could process that, the Mercury appeared ahead, its jump drive charging. The shuttle slipped into the bay just as the ship jumped to safety, leaving the dying star behind. But Jake's troubles, he was beginning to realize, were just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and Jake still couldn't believe where he was. The imperial palace of Velkara Prime stretched out around him like something From a dream, crystal towers reached toward the sky, and gardens filled with alien flowers spread across floating platforms. Everything was beautiful, elegant, and completely overwhelming. He stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, wearing robes that felt ridiculous on his human frame. The Velkhara had tried to make them fit, but he still felt like a child playing dress up. Below, millions of Velkhara went about their lives in a city that made Earth's greatest achievements look primitive. "You're brooding again," said a familiar voice behind him. Jake turned to see Emma Wells, the only other human in the palace. She was a xenobiologist who had been studying Velkhara culture for years. When Lyra had invoked the right of champions, Emma had volunteered to come and help Jake navigate the Imperial court. "I'm not brooding, I'm thinking about how to escape this gilded cage." Emma leaned on the railing beside him. "Don't bother. Half the Empire is watching to see if the Princess Empress's human mate will embarrass her. The other half is actively trying to make that happen." Jake sighed. "I saved some lives. I didn't sign up to be part of an Imperial court drama. The right of champions is sacred law." "Jake, when Lyra invoked it, she bound you to her in the eyes of every Velkhara. Breaking that bond would destroy her reputation and probably start a succession crisis. So I'm stuck here." Emma studied him carefully. "Is it really so bad? Lyra seems kind. She's protected you from the worst of the court politics." That was true. Lyra had been nothing but gracious since they arrived. She had given him his own quarters, respected his space, and never demanded anything from him. But the looks he got from other Velkhara, the whispers that followed him everywhere, made it clear what they thought of a human in the Imperial palace. "There you are," called another voice. Lord Calyx emerged onto the balcony, his tall form moving with predatory grace. He was one of the most powerful nobles in the Empire, and he had made no secret of his contempt for Jake. "The human pet takes the air. How delightful." "Lord Calyx," Emma said coolly, "always a pleasure." "Indeed." Calyx's dark eyes fixed on Jake. "I come with news, human. The council has decided that your bond with the princess Empress must be tested. We cannot have a ruler tied to someone who might prove weak or unsuitable." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "What kind of test?" "The traditional trials, of course. Combat, strategy, and wisdom. 3 challenges to prove your worth." Calyx smiled, showing too many teeth. "I will be your opponent in the combat trial. I do hope you've been training." After Calyx left, Emma touched Jake's arm. "Don't let him bait you. He's been trying to become Lyra's consort for years. Your presence ruins his plans." "Great, so now I have to fight some alien noble who probably has twice my strength and 100 years of combat training." Actually, Velkhara combat trials use simulation technology. It's more about tactics than physical strength. Emma paused. "But yes, he'll destroy you if you fight like a human." Jake spent the next week preparing. Lyra arranged for him to train in the palace simulation chambers, massive rooms that could create any scenario imaginable. He practiced alone, not wanting to show his strategies to potential spies. The simulations were incredible. They felt completely real, from the weight of weapons to the smell of smoke. Jake ran through dozens of scenarios, losing most of them at first. The Velkhara style of combat was elegant and efficient. Nothing like the straightforward human approach. On the third day, Lyra came to watch him train. She stood at the edge of the simulation chamber, her silver robes gleaming in the artificial light. "You're learning quickly," she observed, as Jake finished a scenario, "but you're trying to fight like a Velkara." Jake wiped sweat from his face. "Isn't that the point?" "No," Lyra stepped into the chamber. "The point is to win. The Velkara way is not the only way." She gestured and the simulation reset. "Show me how humans fight." Jake hesitated, then nodded. He loaded a scenario from Earth's military history, one of the great battles where a smaller force had defeated a larger one through unconventional tactics. The simulation created a battlefield and Jake moved through it using terrain deception and surprise instead of elegant technique. When it ended, Lyra was smiling. "That was chaotic, unpredictable. Calyx will not expect this. Humans don't have the luxury of fighting fair," Jake said. "We've spent our whole history outmatched and outgunned. We learned to be creative." Something shifted in Lyra's expression. "I am beginning to understand why you came for us that day. Your people survive by helping each other, by refusing to give up even when the odds are impossible. It's all we know how to do." The day of the combat trial arrived. The arena was filled with thousands of Velkara nobles, all eager to watch the human fail. Jake stood in the center facing Calyx across a simulated battlefield. The scenario was a classic Velkara challenge, a fortified position that had to be taken within a time limit. "Begin," announced the judge. Calyx moved with practiced precision, his forces advancing in perfect formation. He would take the fort through overwhelming force and superior tactics. Exactly as expected. Jake did something else entirely. He split his forces, sending small teams to create diversions while his main force circled wide. He used the terrain in ways the Velkara considered beneath them, hiding troops in gullies and behind rocks. He set traps that were crude but effective. The audience murmured in confusion and disdain. This wasn't how the trial was supposed to go. This was messy and undignified. But it worked. While Calyx's forces were perfectly positioned to defend against a traditional assault, they were vulnerable to Jake's scattered, unpredictable attacks. His troops hit from unexpected angles, retreated before they could be engaged, and slowly wore down the defenses. Calyx's expression grew darker as he realized what was happening. He tried to adapt, but his training worked against him. He kept expecting Jake to follow the rules, to fight properly. When the scenario ended, Jake had taken the fort with time to spare. The arena fell silent. Then Lyra stood, beginning to applaud. Slowly others joined her. Not everyone. Many nobles still looked disgusted, but enough to make it clear that Jake had passed the trial. Calyx's face was tight with barely controlled rage. "You fought without honor." "I fought too." When Jake replied calmly, "That's what the trial was for, wasn't it?" That night, Lyra invited Jake to dine with her in her private chambers. It was the first time they had been truly alone since the rescue. "You impressed many people today," she said, pouring him a glass of wine from some distant world. "You also angered many others." "I seem to be good at that." Lyra laughed, and Jake realized it was the first time he'd heard her laugh genuinely. Do you know why I invoked the right of champions? I assumed it was because I saved your life. Partly, but also because in that moment when you came through the smoke and fire, I saw something I had never seen before. Someone who acted without thought of reward or recognition, someone who risked everything for strangers she met. His eyes. My people have grown comfortable in our power, Jake. We have forgotten what it means to struggle, to sacrifice. You reminded me. Jake didn't know what to say to that. Lyra continued. The next trial is strategy. But I want you to know that whatever happens, I am grateful you are here. As Jake left her chambers that night, he realized something had changed. He wasn't just going through these trials to satisfy the court anymore. He was doing it for Lyra, for the quiet hope he saw in her eyes. That maybe, just maybe, humans had something to teach the mighty Valkara Empire. The explosion ripped through the human settlement on the outer colony of Terra Nova just after midnight. Jake was jolted awake in his palace chambers by an urgent message from Lisa Grant. Her face on the screen was pale and streaked with soot. Jake, we've been hit. Some kind of energy weapon took out our main hab dome. 37 dead, hundreds injured. The attack signature matches Valkara technology. Jake's blood ran cold. Who would attack a human settlement? I don't know, but this is the third attack this month. Someone is targeting humans in Valkara's space, and they're using your people's weapons to do it. Jake immediately went to find Lyra. He found her in the council chamber, surrounded by advisors who fell silent. When he entered, Chancellor Vex stepped forward, blocking his path. The Princess Empress is occupied with matters of state. You should not be here. Humans are dying, Jake said flatly. Killed with Valkara weapons. That makes it a matter of state. Lyra raised her hand, silencing Vex. Let him speak. Jake explained what had happened. As he talked, he watched the reactions of the council members. Most looked genuinely shocked, a few looked uncomfortable. One, a military commander named General Thorax, looked almost satisfied. This is unfortunate, Vex said smoothly. But human settlements in our space are vulnerable. Perhaps they should return to their own territory where they can be properly protected. Or perhaps we should find out who is killing civilians and stop them, Jake shot back. The council erupted into argument. Some demanded investigation, others suggested the humans were lying to gain sympathy. Through it all, Lyra sat silent on her throne, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke. There will be an investigation. General Thorax, you will lead it personally. Thorax bowed, but Jake caught the brief flash of anger in the general's eyes. Something was wrong here. Over the following days, Jake did his own investigating. Emma helped him access Imperial databases, searching for patterns in the attacks. They found something disturbing. Every attack had happened near a location where a group called the Purists had recently held rallies. The Purists are a political faction, Emma explained. They believe the Empire has grown weak by allowing alien species into Valkara space. They want to return to the old ways when the Valkara ruled alone, and they're willing to kill for it. Some of them, apparently. Emma pulled up more data. Look at this. The Purists have been growing in power over the past decade. They have supporters in the military, the nobility, even in the imperial court itself. Jake felt a chill. You think this goes all the way to the top? I think someone very powerful wants humans gone from Velkara space, and they're using the purists to do their dirty work. That night Jake was returning to his quarters when he heard voices from a side corridor. He recognized General Thorax's deep rumble and paused to listen. The next attack must be more decisive, Thorax was saying. We need to create enough fear that the humans leave voluntarily. The council is too divided to expel them by law. Another voice responded, one Jake didn't recognize. What about the Princess Empress? She protects the human. Lyra's attachment to the human is unfortunate, but it will pass. Once Morrison is dealt with, she will see reason. Jake's hand went to his communicator, but before he could activate it, someone grabbed him from behind. A cloth covered his face and the world went dark. He woke in a small cell, his head pounding. The walls were bare metal and the only light came from a narrow window. Through it he could see stars. He was on a ship. The door opened and Lord Calyx entered. Awake already? Humans are more resilient than I expected. Where am I? Somewhere far from the Princess Empress and her protection. Calyx smiled coldly. The purists wanted you dead, but I convinced them you could be more useful alive. You're going to help us prove that humans don't belong in the Empire. By kidnapping me, that will just make Lyra angrier. Oh, we're not keeping you. We're going to let you escape back to your ship. But first, you're going to be exposed to a purity test, an ancient device that measures the worth of a being's bloodline. Calyx's smile widened. It will show everyone what you truly are: a genetic dead end, a species with no connection to the great bloodlines of the galaxy. When the Empire sees the proof, even Lyra won't be able to protect you. They dragged Jake to a chamber deep in the ship. At its center stood a crystalline structure that pulsed with strange energy. Ancient symbols covered its surface, and Jake felt something odd as he looked at it, a strange sense of recognition he couldn't explain. The precursor bloodline analyzer, Calyx announced, built by the ancient ones who seeded the galaxy with life. It reads the genetic signature of any being and reveals their connection to the precursor lineage. All worthy species show some trace. Humans, being primitive newcomers, will show nothing. Jake was forced into a harness at the center of the device. Calyx activated it and energy flowed through the crystal structure. Jake felt it wash over him, through him, reading something deep in his cells. The device hummed, its light growing brighter. The crystals began to glow, not with the pale blue light Calyx expected, but with brilliant white radiance that filled the entire chamber. What? Calyx stumbled back, shielding his eyes. That's impossible. The energy intensified and Jake felt something awakening inside him. It was like a door opening in his mind, revealing rooms he never knew existed. Knowledge flooded in, ancient and vast. He saw the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, before that Velkara, before any of the current species. He saw the precursors, the ancient race that had walked among the stars when they were young. And he understood. Humans carried their complete legacy, not fragments like the Velkara and other species, but the full genetic heritage of the galaxy's first civilization. The harness shattered as power surged. Through Jake, he stood, and energy crackled around his hands. Calyx and his guards backed away in terror. "This cannot be," Calyx whispered. "Humans are primitive, you have no advanced technology, no great empire. You cannot be precursor descendants." Jake looked at his hands, watching energy dance between his fingers. Understanding came to him, knowledge that had been locked away in human DNA. "For millions of years, we are precursor descendants," he said quietly. "Earth was their homeworld, they left. It seeded it with new life and let it evolve naturally, a backup, a reset button for the galaxy if they were ever needed again. No, the prophecies say the precursors are gone forever, they are but there. Children remain." Jake felt the ship around him, felt the technology that was based on precursor designs. With barely a thought, he seized control of it. "I'm leaving now, you're going to let me go, and you're going to tell whoever is behind the purists that they've made a terrible mistake." He walked out of the chamber, the guards parting before him. No one tried to stop him as he made his way to a shuttle and launched toward the nearest human ship. Back at the palace, Lyra had torn the council apart looking for Jake. When he finally appeared walking through the great doors with energy still flickering around him, the entire court fell silent. "Jake," Lyra breathed, rushing down from her throne, "what happened to you?" "I found out the truth," Jake said. "About humans. About why we seem so primitive compared to other species. We're not late to the party, Lyra. We're the ones who built the house." He raised his hand, and a holographic display appeared in the air showing DNA sequences and ancient star charts. The precursors didn't disappear, they went back to their beginning, wiped their own memories, and started over on Earth. Every human carries their complete genetic code. We've been slowly rediscovering what we once knew. The council erupted into chaos. Chancellor Vex looked like he might faint. General Thorax tried to slip away, but Jake gestured and doors sealed throughout the palace. "I also learned something else," Jake said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "I learned who has been attacking human settlements, who has been funding the purists, who wanted to destroy the bond between Lyra and me." He looked directly at Thorax. "It ends now." Lyra stood beside him, her hand finding his. "Is this true? Can you prove it?" "I can prove all of it. The purity device unlocked more than just my heritage. It unlocked memories, knowledge, and the ability to interface with precursor technology. That includes the surveillance systems built into this very palace." What Jake revealed over the next hours shocked the Empire to its core. The conspiracy went deep, involving dozens of high-ranking officials who feared what human emergence would mean. For Velkara dominance, the throne room had become a prison. General Thorax stood in chains along with a dozen other conspirators. The evidence Jake had pulled from the palace systems was overwhelming. Messages, transfer records, even video of secret meetings where they planned attacks on human settlements. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. "There's more," Jake said, his eyes still glowing faintly with precursor energy. "The conspiracy goes deeper than a few military officers and purist sympathizers. There's an organization that has been guiding Velkara policy for thousands of years. They call themselves the Shadow Council." Murmurs rippled through the Assembled nobles. Emma stepped forward, carrying data. Tablets she had helped Jake compile. We found references to them in ancient archives. They've been suppressing knowledge, controlling information, and eliminating threats to their vision of the Empire. Chancellor Vex spoke up, his voice shaking. There is no Shadow Council. It's a myth, a conspiracy theory. Is it? Jake gestured, and holographic displays filled the air. Then explain these financial records. Money flowing from shell companies to fund purist rallies. Explain the communications between Thorax and someone using the encryption codes of the old Imperial intelligence network, codes that were supposedly destroyed centuries ago. Lyra moved through the displays, her face growing darker with each revelation. Who leads this Shadow Council? That's the question, isn't it? Jake manipulated the holograms, following the trail of evidence. They've been careful to hide their identities. But the precursor technology I can now access sees patterns that normal analysis would miss. Every decision, every manipulation, it all flows through one person. He turned to face the council, someone who has been at the heart of Imperial power for decades, someone trusted by every princess Empress since the current dynasty began. All eyes turned to Chancellor Vex. The old Valkyra's composure finally cracked. You cannot prove anything. I have served this empire faithfully for 50 years. You've served your vision of the empire. Jake corrected. The Shadow Council was formed after the precursors disappeared. Your ancestors found fragments of precursor technology and knowledge. They learned that the precursors had left protocols, safeguards to prevent anyone species from dominating the galaxy. The Shadow Council decided to ignore those protocols. They wanted the Valkyr to rule alone. And what is wrong with that? Vex's voice rose. We are the strongest, the most advanced. We brought order to chaos, civilization to barbarism. The Empire has thrived under our guidance. By suppressing anyone who might challenge Valkyra dominance, Lyra said quietly. How many species have you held back? Vex, how many discoveries have you buried? Vex drew himself up proudly. Everything I did was for the Empire. When we detected that humans were beginning to explore space, we studied you. We found the precursor markers in your genetics. We knew what you could become. So yes, I ensured that humanity was classified as primitive, that you were kept at arm's length. I did this to protect our people. You did this to protect your power, Jake said, but you failed because humans don't give up. We don't stay where you put us, and now the truth is out. Before Vex could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. A guard rushed in, his face pale. Princess Empress, we have multiple reports of purist forces mobilizing across the capital. They're armed with military-grade weapons. This is a coup. Lyra spun to face her remaining loyal guards. Secure the palace, get the civilian population to safety, and someone tell me how purist rebels got military weapons into my capital city. Jake said, accessing the palace defense systems through his newfound abilities. They have supporters throughout the military. If they can't control you through Vex, they'll replace you with someone they can control. Lord Calyx, Lyra breathed. He was always ambitious, always resentful of my refusal to name him consort. If I fall, the succession laws say the Council would choose the next ruler, and the Shadow Council controls enough of that council to ensure their puppet takes the throne, Emma added. An explosion rocked the palace. Through the windows they could see fires erupting across the capital. The purist forces were not just attempting a coup, they were staging a full rebellion. Jake felt the precursor technology throughout the city, ancient systems that had been built into the foundations of Velkara Prime itself. The knowledge flowing through him showed how to access it, how to activate defenses that had been dormant for millennia. I can stop this, he said, but Lyra, if I do, everyone will know what humans are capable of. There's no going back from that. Your empire will never see my people the same way again. Lyra met his eyes. In that moment, Jake saw everything she was feeling. The fear, the anger, the hurt of betrayal. But also something else, trust. Do it, she said. Save my people. Save our future. Jake closed his eyes and reached out. With his mind, the precursor legacy in his DNA resonated with the ancient technology buried beneath the city, systems that had been sleeping since before the Velkara even existed flickered to life. Throughout the capital, purist forces suddenly found their weapons failing. The military-grade energy rifles they had stolen simply stopped working. Their armored vehicles ground to a halt. Even their communications went dead. But Jake was just getting started. He activated the city's ancient defense grid, a network of protective shields, and automated systems that the Velkara had never even known existed. The shields were selective, protecting civilian areas while isolating the purist forces. In the palace throne room, holographic displays showed the situation across the city. The coup was falling apart in real time. Its leaders trapped and confused as their technology betrayed them. How is this possible? One of the nobles whispered. This is what humans are, Jake said. Simply, this is our birthright. The precursors built fail-safes into their technology, genetic keys that only their direct descendants could access. The Velkara and other species can use precursor technology, but only humans can truly command it. Lord Calyx's face appeared on the main display. He was in his fortress across the city, surrounded by armed guards who were staring at their useless weapons. Morrison, what have you done? I ended your rebellion before it could begin, Jake replied. Surrender now and you'll face trial, continue, and I'll shut down every piece of technology in your fortress, your life support, your gravity generators, everything. You're bluffing. One human cannot control an entire city's worth of technology. Jake smiled grimly and gestured. Every light in Calyx's fortress went out. When they came back on seconds later, the noble's face was pale with fear. I'm not bluffing. Stand down now. Surrender came within the hour. Purist forces throughout the capital laid down their useless weapons. Calyx and his co-conspirators were arrested without a shot being fired. But the crisis was not over. News of what had happened spread across the empire at light speed. A human had single-handedly stopped a military coup, using powers that shouldn't exist. The reaction was swift and divided. Some systems sent messages of support, recognizing that Jake had saved countless lives. Others sent messages of fear and anger, demanding that humans be expelled from the empire before they could seize control. That night Jake stood on the palace balcony with Lyra, watching the city slowly return to normal. Emma joined them carrying a data tablet. I've been analyzing the genetic data from the Purity device, she said. Jake isn't unique. Every human carries the precursor. Legacy, most of us just haven't activated it yet. Half my advisors want to embrace this change. The other half wants to lock you in a cage and study you. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. I want to see what happens when humans and Velcaro work together instead of against each other. I want to build something new. The traditionalists won't accept that easily. No, they won't, which is why tomorrow I'm going to address the Imperial Senate, and you're going to stand beside me when I do it. The Imperial Senate chamber was the largest room Jake had ever seen. Thousands of seats rose in concentric circles around a central platform where Lyra stood, regal in her formal robes. Jake stood one step behind her, acutely aware of every eye upon him. The murmuring died as Lyra raised her hand. Senators, nobles, representatives of the great houses, you know why we are gathered. The events of the past days have shaken our empire to its foundations. Conspiracy, rebellion, and revelations that challenge everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. They challenge nothing, interrupted Senator Draven from the traditionalist faction, except our wisdom in allowing primitive species into civilized space. This human has perverted ancient technology through some trick. He must be contained and studied before he becomes a threat to us all. Angry agreement erupted from one section of the Senate, but others shouted them down, calling for calm and reason. Lyra waited for the noise to subside. Jake Morrison is no threat to the Empire. He has saved my life twice now. Once from a dying star and once from those who would have torn our civilization apart from within. Because he has power, Draven shot back. Power he should not possess. The precursors are gone. Their legacy belongs to all civilized species equally. Does it? Jake stepped forward and the Senate fell silent. He had not been scheduled to speak, but Lyra nodded encouragement. Senator Draven, you say the precursor legacy belongs to all species equally. But the Shadow Council didn't believe that. They've spent thousands of years hoarding precursor knowledge, using it to keep the Velkara in power while holding other species back. You have no proof of such an organization. Actually, I do. Jake activated a holographic display showing documents and communications extracted from the secret archives. The Shadow Council kept detailed records. They were proud of what they did. They believed they were protecting the Empire, but what they really protected was Velkara supremacy. The evidence was damning. Messages showing how the Shadow Council had sabotaged other species' development, how they had classified like humans as primitive to justify limiting their access to technology and knowledge, how they had manipulated imperial policy for generations. Even if this is true, another senator said, it does not change the fact that you, a single human, now have abilities that could threaten the entire empire. How can we trust you? You can't, Jake said bluntly, not yet. Trust is earned, but I can show you what human abilities mean for the Empire. May I demonstrate? Lyra nodded, and Jake turned to face the assembled Senate. He reached out with his mind touching the precursor technology that formed the Foundation of the Senate building. Itself. Ancient systems responded to his call. Ones that had been dormant for millions of years. The air in the center of the chamber shimmered and a holographic image appeared. It showed the galaxy as it had in the time of the precursors. Thousands of thriving civilizations, connected by networks of technology and knowledge. Then the image shifted, showing the galaxy after the precursors vanished. Civilizations collapsing, knowledge lost, darkness spreading. The precursors didn't die, Jake explained. They chose to end their civilization. They had grown too powerful, too advanced. They feared they would stagnate or worse, become tyrants over the younger species. So, they scattered themselves across the galaxy, wiping their own memories, becoming part of the genetic foundation of many species. The hologram showed DNA strands, highlighting the precursor markers in different species. The Velkara had fragments, so did dozens of other civilized species. But humans had something different. Earth was their final project, Jake continued. They returned to their home world and let themselves evolve naturally, carrying their complete genetic legacy, but locked away dormant, a safeguard. If the galaxy ever needed the precursors again, humanity would be there, slowly rediscovering what was lost. And now you want us to believe you're here to save us, Draven scoffed. Hell, convenient. I don't want to save you, Jake said. I want to work with you. Every species in this empire has precursor heritage. Together we could access knowledge and technology that the galaxy hasn't in millions of years. But only if we cooperate instead of fighting over who gets to be in charge. An older senator stood, her voice thoughtful. If what you say is true, other humans will soon gain these abilities. What? Then will Earth demand control of the empire? Jake laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that many senators looked startled. Earth doesn't want to control anything. We're too busy fighting with each other over much smaller things. Do you know what humans excel at? Senator, survival adaptation. We've spent our entire history as the underdog, finding ways to thrive when we should have failed. That's what precursor legacy gives us. Not dominance, but resilience. Emma had been standing quietly at the edge of the platform. Now she stepped forward, carrying her research. I've studied the genetic activation patterns. Human abilities manifest in different ways. Some show enhanced technological intuition, like Jake. Others show artistic genius, or scientific insight, or diplomatic skill. We're not becoming a race of super soldiers. We're becoming more of what we already are: diverse, adaptable, and creative. And dangerous, Draven insisted. You cannot deny that. Dangerous, Jake felt anger rising. Your Shadow Council was willing to slaughter human civilians to maintain Velkara power. Your purest rebels nearly destroyed your own capital. Don't lecture me about dangerous when your people have spent centuries suppressing and manipulating others for your benefit. Lyra placed a hand on his arm, a gentle reminder. Jake took a breath and continued more calmly. Yes, humans could be dangerous, so could the Velkara, so could any species with access to advanced technology. The question isn't whether we have power, it's what we choose to do with it. But words are not guarantees. Then let me offer a guarantee. Lyra's voice rang out clearly. I propose a new era for the Empire, not Felkar supremacy but genuine partnership. The Shadow Councils archives will be open to all member species. Precursor technology and knowledge will be shared, not hoarded. And humans will be recognized as full citizens of the Empire, with Earth granted a seat on the governing council. The Senate erupted into chaos. Some cheered, others shouted in outrage. Draven looked apoplectic. You would give power to those who have done nothing to earn it. They earned it by surviving, Lyra shot back, by thriving despite every obstacle, by producing individuals like Jake Morrison who risked their lives for strangers. If that's not worthy of respect, Senator, then what is? The debate raged for hours, but slowly Jake began to see the tide turning. Not all at once, and not completely. Enough senators were willing to consider a new path. Enough were tired of the old ways, the old fears. Finally, a vote was called. The measure passed, narrowly but decisively. Earth would join the council, knowledge would be shared, the Empire would change. As the Senate adjourned, Jake found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious nobles wanting to speak with him. Emma rescued him, pulling him aside to a quiet corner. You know, this is just the beginning, she said. There will be resistance, there will be challenges. Some people will never accept humans as equals. I know, but it's a start. Lyra found them both later, looking exhausted but triumphant. The council wants to send delegations to Earth to begin the process of integration and knowledge sharing. Earth is going to lose its mind when it finds out about all this, Jake said. We thought we were alone in the universe just a few years ago. Now we're founding members of a galactic empire, not members, Lyra corrected gently. Partners, there's a difference. Over the following weeks, Jake watched as the Empire began to transform. It was slow, painful work. Old prejudices didn't die easily, but change was happening. Other humans began to activate their precursor heritage. A scientist on Mars suddenly understood quantum mechanics at a level that allowed her to solve problems that had stumped researchers for decades. An artist on Europa created sculptures that seemed to capture the very essence of space and time. A diplomat helped negotiate a peace treaty between two species that had been at war for generations. Each activation was different, unique to the individual, but all of them shared something, a connection to the ancient knowledge that humans carried in their DNA. Jake himself continued to learn. The precursor abilities didn't come with an instruction manual. He had to figure out what he could do through trial and error. He could interface with ancient technology. He could access stored knowledge. He could even manipulate certain forms of energy. But the most important thing he learned was that power without purpose was meaningless. He could command technology, yes, but commanding people was something else entirely. That required trust, respect, and time. His relationship with Lyra deepened. The bond that had started as a political arrangement became something real. They would sit for hours discussing philosophy, history, and the future they wanted to build. She taught him about Valkara culture and the weight of imperial responsibility. He taught her about human resilience and the strength that came from diversity. Do you ever regret it? She asked him one evening as they watched the sunset from her private garden. Coming here being bound to me having your life turned upside down. Jake thought about his old life as a simple engineer on an exploration ship. About the moment he decided to fly into a radiation storm to save strangers. About everything that had happened. Since, no, he said finally. I don't regret it. It's been terrifying and overwhelming and completely insane. But I don't regret it. Good, Lyra smiled. Because I have more plans for you. Ambassador Morrison. Ambassador. Earth needs a representative who understands both human and Valkara culture, someone who has proven themselves worthy of trust. The council approved your appointment. This morning, Jake groaned, more politics, more opportunities to shape the future. Unless you'd rather go back to engineering. He looked at her at the hope and determination in her eyes and knew he could never walk away from this, from the chance to build something better. I guess I'm an ambassador then. Months later, when the first human delegation arrived from Earth, Jake stood beside Lyra to greet them. Among them was Lisa Grant, his old captain, looking overwhelmed by the grandeur of the Imperial Palace. Well, she said, taking in the crystal towers and floating gardens. You've certainly moved up in the world. It's been a journey, Jake admitted. The whole Earth is talking about you. About what we are. Some people are scared, some are excited. Everyone wants to know what happens next. What happens next, Jake said, looking at Lyra, at the empire they were working to transform, at the future that was still being written, is up to all of us together. And for the first time since this all began, Jake truly believed it. Humans were no longer the overlooked newcomers, the primitive species on the galactic fringe. They were partners in building a better future. Not because they had proven themselves superior, but because they had proven themselves worthy. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, neither would humanity. And that, Jake thought, was exactly as it should be.